So I'm excited to announce that I have Seth Godin on the show. And this is going to be a little bit of a crossover because normally on the Smart Agency Masterclass, it's only audio. And obviously on the Swenk today, it's usually always just video. Well, I'm kind of bringing these two shows together because of the Godfather of Marketing is coming on, and we talk all about marketing, we talk about branding, we talk about what's the future of agencies and what you can do in order to separate yourself and grow your agency faster. So let's go ahead and get into the show. Hey Seth, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this. It's thankless work. So when I show up, I try to point out to people, we know you're doing the work. Thank you.
Oh man, I'm just excited you're on. Like I'm a little starstruck to be like, and I never get that way. So all my audience is probably just dying laughing right now. But for that one person that is crawling under the rock, that is maybe just kind of coming out, that has never heard of you, how would you describe what you do and who you are?
I was sitting next to someone at a dinner party a couple of weeks ago, and she introduced herself and she said, "And what do you do?" And I told her, and she turned bright red because she runs an agency with more than 100 employees, and they do permission marketing and try to organize tribes and are helping clients create purple cows. And she had no idea who I was. And I was thrilled, because if you're doing science, it's not about who said it, right? That if it turns out that Einstein was a plagiarist, it wouldn't change the truth of the theory of relativity. And so I don't need to be associated with the ideas, but what I do is I bring ideas to the world. I'm a teacher. I run the marketing seminar, which is probably the biggest online marketing school of its kind. And I write a blog every day.
That's awesome. And I bet she was like, afterwards, she probably did some research and she was like, oh my gosh, what was the opportunity I had sitting by you on a plane?
We had a good time.
That's very good. What do you see as the future for that agencies need to do with marketing and with their clients in the future? What do you see?
Well, okay, so let's go back in the time machine 100 years to understand how agencies exist to begin with. Agencies were sales reps for newspapers. And the newspapers said, if you make the sale, you can keep 15%. Oh, and by the way, do a little bit of typesetting. Thank you very much. And as the price of ads went up, the value of the 15% went up, but it also required more of the ad making part. So that's the history of agencies. That shifted about 20 years ago with Zenith and the others, where they said, we're just going to buy the media. You can figure out how to make your own ads. And when you split those two, it's an interesting question. Are you a salesperson representing the media company now? Or are you on our side of the table helping us do X, Y, and Z? And so that's the long history of agencies. So what do you do now anyway? Because the fact is we don't need you to place an ad on Facebook, or we don't need you to place an ad in the New York Times. And how should you get paid anyway? So what I said starting in about 2000 is, look, there are very few organizations that have the ear of the CEO. You are one of them. Your job should be to use that limited resource you have to get her to let you make them make better products. That your access to the CEO means you ought to be sitting with the engineers. You ought to be sitting with the product designers. You ought to be sitting with the people who worry about downstream waste. You ought to be sitting with the customer service people, because that's all marketing now. So if you have done the lazy thing, I've made it smaller and smaller and smaller, which is I fill the funnel at a slightly lower cost per click, then I have no sympathy for your pain, because someone's going to be sharper elbowed than you to cut that cost per click. You know, at Yo-Yo-Dine in 1995, I invented with David and Jerry, Get Rich Click. We were selling clicks on the web for 50 cents a click. And if you know anything about what you pay for a click now, that was a super bargain. Yahoo bought us partly because they were selling clicks for $2 and we were disrupting their market. But I also knew that once people figured out we were selling clicks for 50 cents, someone was going to sell clicks for 45 cents. That's inevitable. Don't be in that business. Figure out how to be in the business of doing marketing, which has nothing to do with advertising.
Yeah. No one wants to race to the bottom, but everybody keeps doing that. They go,
Exactly.
like, I'll talk to agencies and be like, well, how'd you come up with the pricing? Well, we just looked in the market and then we just were like, we'll go a little bit below because we don't have the overhead.
Exactly.
And I'm like, what are you going to do when you race to the bottom, when you hit the bottom?
You might win.
Yeah,
That
you
would be
can win
bad.
that. That's an easy win. Now in this amazing book that you have, you talk about the difference between a logo and a brand. And I think that plays in very well with agencies because they're trying to build, like, they think, let me design this amazing logo.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about that.
So here's an interesting thought experiment. Close your eyes and think of a logo you admire. Okay. Did you think of one? If you're driving, don't do that. Did you think of, all right, the logo you thought of, was it related to a brand you admire? Or was it, I don't know, a swastika? Because no one ever picks a swastika.
Mm-hmm.
They always pick a logo associated with a brand they care about. It turns out there are some brands that have horrible logos, like Starbucks. Right? If you had gone to a pitch meeting and say, all right, we're going to combine an over bold Helvetica with a woodcut of a naked mermaid, right? It's 2019, we're using a naked mermaid. And by the way, we're going to name the company after an obscure character from a not very good novel from the 1800s, right? Should we do this? But people probably who just heard my thing picked Starbucks as a logo. No, all a logo is a souvenir, a signpost to remind us of a brand. And a brand is the promise that is made, a shortcut for our expectations. So here's the second exercise. If I told you Nike was going to open a hotel, could you imagine what it would be like?
Yes.
If I told you Hyatt was going to come out with a line of sneakers, could you imagine what they would be like? No clue. We have no idea what Hyatt sneakers would be like. Hyatt doesn't have a brand. Hyatt only has a logo. You can add way more value by helping someone build a brand.
Yeah, and I think with your Hyatt example, if you put any of the other logos in it, that's kind of how I look at with all these agencies. You can put any name in it.
Right.
What do you guys stand for? What's the value that you provide? And then when I ask agencies that, they say, well, we have the best customer service. We have the best portfolio. We have awards. We've won Addies. And it doesn't really kind of communicate what they stand for, what they believe.
So part of the work of being the CEO of an agency is getting new clients. And I'm not going to minimize that. It's hard to get new clients. And there are some clients who will pick you because when they tell other people why they picked you, they can mention your awards. If you don't give them a good thing to tell other people, then they're not going to pick you. Or if they do, they won't tell other people. So that's a key part of what you do. So my favorite agency was written up in a book years ago. And it was an agency in the UK that had won a ton of awards. They had 30 partners, people, principals, and the path in front of them was obvious. Once you win those awards, the phone starts ringing. You get more clients. You hire more people. The people you hire aren't as good as your core team because you're in a hurry and you're growing. And then you get slightly above average, and then Saatchi & Saatchi buys you. And then you have a 4-year earnout, you're miserable, and then you're done. That is the path. And these guys said, we don't want to go on that path. So they made a rule, and the rule is, we're not going to hire anybody else. And in order to do that, we can't have any new clients. But then they said to their clients, we have these rules. So the only way we can take one of the people on the waiting list is to fire one of you. That's our policy. From now on, if you're not a good client, you're out. That changed everything because number one, all these people wanted to be on the waiting list to work with an agency that wouldn't take them. And two, if you're a client and you're sitting in the meeting, you go, I don't know, that's a little edgy. They're like, okay, we have a meeting with a prospective client in an hour. See ya, you're fired. If the client knows that, they're way more likely to let you do great work because they don't want to get kicked out. That one shift changes the way you work every single day. Your goal should not be more. Your goal should be better.
Yeah, I just started working with an agency and they want to go from 1 million to 10 million in a year. I was like, okay, let's kind of look at this and let's look at your average of what you're charging your clients now. And the average was $10,000 a month. And I'm like, holy cow, in the next 90 days, you need like 200 clients. And I was like, is this realistic? And he's like, oh, I can do it. I was like, all right, come on. I was like, what if we just charged more? We don't need as many. But let's look at the value you deliver.
Right.
And I find that is a huge problem, is a lot of agencies don't know the value that they deliver to people. So then they don't charge enough. So how does one kind of really kind of look at what are we actually worth? Like, how do you put what you're worth?
Well, so first you got to get past the more and better thing, because if you want more, then you're not really keeping track of what you're worth. You're keeping track of how much more busy can I become. If your goal is better, then there are two ways to figure out your value. One is, compared to the alternatives, how much do I cost? Because if 100 people will sell you a hammer for $1, I can't sell you a hammer for $2 because it's still a hammer. And the other half of that is, if you have a lock and I have a key and I can unlock it for you, and on the other side of that door is everything you hope for, how much is the key worth? Is the key based on how many hours it took me to make the key? Or is the key based on what's on the other side of the door? What do you get, right? So the way those two pieces fit together is, A, you can't make something that 100 other people make. No matter how much you want to spin it and hype it, if you are not the one and only, you're not worth more than a penny more than the alternatives. But if you are the one and only, then let's be clear about what's on the other side of the door. So your friend who's at $1 million, if he was able to say, based on our technology and the assets we've built and the people who work here, who there's no replicant of those people anywhere else, we're going to turn a $10 million business to a $100 million business, and we've done it before. What's that worth? Well, 100 minus 10 is 90. So $90 million on the table. And if what you just said is true, it's worth $89 million. And if you don't think that's correct, go look at how much Google gets when you win an auction on a keyword, right? If you've decided that that keyword is worth 12 bucks, you're willing to bid up to 11. So Google's taking almost all the money because they're saying, you got someone better than me? Go buy it from them. But you can't. That's the way you're going to create value, is by one of those two things in conjunction with the other one.
I love it. I love it. You talk a lot about creating a very small audience or going after a very select few. And a lot of marketers, they have a big challenge with this.
Yeah.
They go, I want everything. I want everybody. Like, who's your market? My market is businesses from 20 million to 100 million. That's how they define it.
Yeah, because they're hiding. And so this is marketing, which might be my most successful book I've ever written. That's one of the key tenets of the book. The smallest viable audience is way better. Why? Not because I'm saying you should serve few people. I'm saying you should be specific, because the web is not a mass medium. People think it is. They treat it like it is. 3 billion people, that's mass. No, it's an infinite series of micro media that nobody wins YouTube on any given day. YouTube is 100 million channels, and they're specific. So when you realize that, you should understand that the Super Bowl is an idiot's purchase, because you're paying extra to reach people you don't want to reach. You should pay extra to reach the people you do want to reach, the smallest group. And when you can identify who they are, you can make something just for them. And so how many people in the United States collect Hawaiian shirts made out of rayon? I don't know, 10,000. But if you made the best, most collectible shirt made out of rayon for people who collect that, they're easy to find. If it's irresistible to them, they will buy it and they will tell the others. Why is that not the obvious answer compared to, oh yeah, lots of people make plaid shirts, I make plaid shirts too. Well, now you're dealing with mass. Mass is not your friend. Specific is your friend.
but when they start looking at kind of getting specific, their biggest fear is missing out, missing out on all the other people. So what do you say to them to be like, because I'm trying to cement this in their heads.
You're already missing out. If you were Oprah, you wouldn't be talking to me. If you were, the dominant, I can't even think of a dominant maker anymore, Heinz Ketchup, which just reported horrible earnings. If you were dominant, you wouldn't be sitting here whining about what you're missing out on. You're missing out every day. The reason you're missing out is you're trying to be Heinz, and that spot's already taken. You will not miss out if you figure out how to be missed when you are gone by the smallest group that can support you. If you make music for them, they'll come and they'll bring their friends.
Yeah, whenever we put out content, we put out 2 shows a week, and people are constantly saying, it feels like you're just listening into our conversation. And I was like, it's because I was you. I ran an agency. I remember how hard it was.
Right.
And I just wanted to create a resource I wish I had.
Right.
And I think I show empathy to them. I say, like, I understand. So can you talk a little bit about why is it so important to like care what you do?
Well, I think there are 2 reasons to care. The biggest one is your life will suck if you don't. The other reason, which is more capital focused, is practical empathy means I don't know what you know. I don't believe what you believe. I don't want what you want, and that's okay. And if you can't add, and that's okay, you can't serve that person. If you are saying you have to believe what I believe and want what I want to be my customer, then there's almost nobody left. But if you can go to people and say, but may I teach you something? Are you enrolled in learning something from me that might change the way you solve your problem? Then you can see yourself as a teacher, not as someone who's taking attention or scamming people.
Yeah, I love that. I just, it's so hard. Like, I know Tony Robbins always has a great quote that I love. It's like, we're drowning in information, but we're starving for knowledge.
Yeah.
Because there's so much noise out there, and everybody sees like, oh, we'll do a video, we'll do an ad, we'll run it, and then we'll get people into our course. And there's no kind of free content out there. And the cool thing that I really like, and I always tell people, it's a long game. Because a lot of times when people engage with me, they've been digesting our content for 2 to 3 years. And I used to be like, how can I speed that up? But now I'm kind of like, how do I slow that down? Because that just makes it even better. Like, I was like, I still can't believe I've held their attention that long.
Well, so it's super generous what you're doing, but I want to challenge one little thing here, which is change doesn't happen without tension. That if you want to shoot a rubber band across the room, you have to pull it and create tension, right? And the internet has certainly opened the door for a huge amount of free content. I have published 7,400 posts, 50 plus podcasts. I mean, it goes on and on. What is the purpose from a commercial point of view of free? It is trust. It is attention, trust, and permission. It is, oh, this person isn't trying to hassle me or hustle me. This person is turning on lights. I'd like more of that. The trap is making it all free all the time. Because when you do that, there's no tension. What we know from the workshops we run is I have very aggressively found nonprofits, and we always give them free scholarships to take our courses. And they drop out at 5 times the rate of everybody else.
Because they didn't pay?
Yeah, because as soon as it gets hard, they say, oh, that's okay. No sunk costs. And they're gone. But education is always hard. That's why it works, because you must become incompetent on your way to becoming competent again. And so we insist on charging for the Alt MBA and the other things we do, not because I'm trying to hustle to make a living, but because I want it to work. And the best way to get it to work is to charge for it.
I love it. Talk about how people make decisions based on status, because that's important to really kind of understand in what we do. And, all the people listening, they're like, we're talking to big brands. Sometimes we're talking to little brands. Like, how do we kind of approach it for a status?
So I can give you 10,000 simple examples. Let's talk about last night. I passed an Audi R8 driving on the Sawmill River Parkway. I don't know, what's that cost? $145,000 carbon fiber. I passed it in my Prius. So what is the purpose of an Audi R8? It is not to beat me in a race. Okay, status. When we think about who eats lunch first at the Oasis and the game reserve, the hippo gets to eat lunch before the jackal because the hippo has more status because he can step on the jackal. When we think about who gets to pitch first between DDB or your little agency, it's DDB. Do we know that that person's better than you? No, their agency has more status. Status roles are baked deep into our evolutionary heritage. And most people, most of the time, are not looking at an RFP in a spreadsheet and doing the economically highest ranked thing. They are doing the thing that will preserve their status, help them move up in status, keep them from moving down in status. It's pro wrestling all day long. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you start going down that path, you realize that what your customers want to buy from you is probably not 0.1% better response rate on the control, but they're probably trying to buy from you with some version of status.
I love it. You also talk a lot about the network effect of, hey, I'm doing this, you should be doing this, right? And growing your business that way. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there are two kinds of network effect. There is the cultural network effect of people like us do things like this. And that would explain why way more people have a Harley than have a Triumph motorcycle. It's not that Harleys are better in any given moment. It's that people like us, we drive Harleys. And I don't want to go through the trouble of explaining why I'm not driving a Harley. The technical one is way more powerful, which is this works better if you use it too. This is why there's only one Facebook, not 6 Facebooks for you to choose between. This is why there's only one format of fax machine. All fax machines can fax each other because it works better if you have a fax machine too. And so if you're creating something and you're touching the internet, you need to have a network effect built in, because the marketing of the network effect there, Airbnb, 10,000 times bigger than the impact of a clever banner ad.
How could you create a network effect if you're an agency?
Well, you're defining agency different than me. I'm defining agency as the person who's sitting next to the CEO telling her what to do. Who else could do a network effect other than that agency, right? If you are waiting for mediocre products, for mediocre people to come down the pike with some cash for you to go interrupt and spam people with, you have no prayer, and I don't want to help you.
I love it. I love it. What, in wrapping up, if one person was listening and there was one thing that you got to tell them that was your best advice to catapult their agency to where they want to be, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to resist all shortcuts that involve one piece of advice. We are dealing with a systems problem here. We are not dealing with a technique problem. That in The Graduate, when the guy says to Dustin Hoffman, plastics, that's one piece of advice. He probably didn't take the advice, but that's one piece of advice. That's not what's going on here. What's going on here is the system that built our economy, the system that built our culture is changing forever during our lifetime. You are right there with your hands on the wheel. If you can't spend the time to understand the system, to realize how human beings function, to get deep into what does it mean to make a product or service that spreads, then you're not serious. But if you are serious, you're already on that road, and it's my job to encourage you to keep going.
Awesome. And the last question, a lot of people always try to work on their weaknesses.
Yeah.
But I actually tell people, I'm like, no, just work on your strengths.
Sure thing.
And, and I always use the example of kind of like, Walmart. Their strength is they charge very low. But if they wanted to, work on their weakness, they would have to, hire better people, pay people more, and then they would lose out.
Yeah, I gave a speech at Walmart in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1999. That was 20 years ago. And I walked into their really dumpy theater, and there was a huge banner on the wall. And the banner said, "You can't out Amazon Amazon." Even 20 years ago, they knew they didn't have the DNA to go be that. They wanted to be them. And Walmart won't last forever, but while it lasts, people are having a fine ride there. Yeah, if one of your weaknesses is that you're a jerk, you should probably work on that. But in general, people want somebody who is a very sharp knife, not a mediocre Swiss Army knife that has a lot of tools on it. And if you can be the best in the world at what you do, there'll be a line out your door.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Seth, obviously, you guys got to go check out Seth's book. This is Marketing. Also, I love all the other books, The Purple Cow, and like, I hardly ever read books, but I read your books. Like,
Yeah.
I always laugh. People are always like, "You read this book?" I'm like, "Nope. Unless he read it or wrote it, I probably haven't." So everybody go check it out. It's an amazing book. And Seth, thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure. Go make a ruckus.
Wow, that was an amazing interview and experience to talk to one of the people that I've always looked up to. And I would love to hear your comments below. Comment below. And if you're not yet subscribed, hit that little bell button so you don't miss out on other cool things that we're doing. And until next time, have a swank day.